All right, how are we doing on critical mass?
Well, if you're looking at just in sheer kilograms, we're actually doing quite well. But if it's quantity, not so much.
Well, you're supposed to be really good. You're supposed to be a really good politician, so you got to use milligrams.
It's incredible how many we have. That's right. We have millions of something. Mhm.
Okay, well, good morning, everyone. We'll get this started. I'm Paul Savis, Clackamas County Commissioner, co-chair of this group, and my colleague,
Brett Sherman, City Councilor, Happy Valley, co-chair
take
as
over,
well.
sir.
I will be delighted to do so. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the C4 Metro Subcommittee. To the best of my knowledge, today is Wednesday, January 15th, and great to have you, to see you all virtually online. Any updates or anything for the good of the order before we just jump right into the mix?
Well, you have a couple new members, I believe.
Wow.
At least one I can see in the audience right now, or not in the audience, but in our group. So,
Absolutely. Why don't we just do a quick round of introductions then, and we'll just kind of go from there. So I'll just run right down the list as I see it on my screen, and I apologize if I pick on somebody multiple times, but let's just start off with Commissioner Savas. You already introduced yourself. I see Councilor Lewis is here. Councilor Lewis, good morning.
Yes, good morning, Christine Lewis. I represent Metro on this committee.
Very good. Mr. Bashir.
Good morning, Councilman Sherman. Dwight Brashear. I am the Transit Director for the City of Wilsonville. We operate SMART.
Very good. Mr. Owen, I see you on the screen as well.
Yes, hello, good morning. Jeff Owen with Clackamas County, joining you for a few of today's topics.
Very good. Mayor Buck.
Hi, Joe Buck, Mayor of Lake Oswego. Good morning.
The incredible Mayor Milch.
Good morning, Michael Milch, Mayor of Gladstone.
And let's see. I think it's technically it's Commissioner Mitchell, is it not?
Yes, it is. Mike Mitchell, City Commissioner, Oregon City. Good morning, everybody.
And Mr. O'Neill, I apologize. I do not know your title.
Good morning, folks. Sean O'Neill, Mayor of Wilsonville, just sworn in a week ago. So welcome to join the group.
Congratulations. I apologize for not being aware of that way over here in Happy Valley. And Councilor Pratt, I see you as well.
Hi, Valerie Pratt, 12 City Council.
Very good. And is it Councilor or Council President Baumgardner nowadays? Oh, who is connecting to audio. So I'll give her just a moment to connect to audio. There we go. Boom. Are you there? Can you hear me, Councilor or Council President Baumgardner?
Yes, sorry. I was just trying to get my audio to work. I couldn't hear you until just that second. Mary Baumgardner, City Council President for City of Westland.
Very good. And our incredible staff members, Ms. Lorenzini.
Hey, Jamie Lorenzini, your staff support.
And Mr. Wilson, who is looking for some more ham in his fridge. Very good. Anyone that I missed? All right. Welcome to all of you. It's great to see you all. Really appreciate it. And I think we will just jump right in. Unless I see any hands up, we're going to go right into the JPAC update. So starting off, Jeff Owen, floor is yours.
Great. Thank you for having me. Good morning again. Jeff Owen, Principal Transportation Planner with Clackamas County. The first item here we wanted to touch on that I'll attempt to screen share is the the JPAC meeting tomorrow morning. Just wanted to make sure and get a little bit of awareness around the bond scenarios. Your packet, I believe, does also include the work program. So as you, the members here that are also part of JPAC, that will be a portion of tomorrow's discussion. let's see, I don't believe I can currently share screen, but starting off tomorrow's meeting will be a discussion of some of the future work program topics for JPACT. So we'll go ahead and jump right into kind of the main one that is occupying a lot of time on the JPACT calendar.
Jeff, do you want to try again
Yep.
to jump up? Okay.
Sure, will do. All right, so I do believe, yes, I believe hopefully this is sharing. So at your meeting tomorrow morning for the JPAC members, part of the comments from the chair will include a regional rail study update. I know this is a little small, so I'll zoom in here, but I think you've also got this in your packet. And then discussing this work plan as to what's coming up for the year ahead. Receive an update on the cooling corridors, which is a study getting underway. We're still learning more about that and kind of how it has implications into some other pieces of work underway. So we'll learn more tomorrow morning. And then bulk of time is likely to be spent on what we're also hoping to talk with you today about is the regional flex fund allocation draft scenario assessment. There is a lot of movement right now, and this is kind of right in the middle of the flexible fund allocation process to determine the next few years of funding across a couple of different pieces of that program. So that will be the bulk of a lot of the discussion. So unless there's any kind of questions on the work program for the JPAC piece, maybe we'll go ahead and move into the Flex Fund discussion. And just go ahead and interrupt me if there's anything else. So what I'd hope to do this morning is just walk through a few pieces of the packet and just share a few thoughts for your consideration, and especially for the JPAC members for tomorrow morning, and just have some discussion where everyone can kind of share some thoughts and feedback for those members to consider in tomorrow's discussion. Again, the Metro team doing this evaluation is looking at a few different possible ways to expand or consider a new bond scenario. So within the Flex Fund allocation for the years 28 through 2030 ahead of us, 3 years, there is interest in looking at whether the region does have interest and capacity to bond for new projects or programs. That would be in continuation, in addition to continuing to pay down the pieces that are already committed. So there's a few different kind of pieces to this puzzle, and it can be a little confusing. So please do feel free to make sure and ask any questions if anything is not clear today. And we'll be thinking about what pieces of information could really help tomorrow's discussion. The flexible fund allocation team did also present and have a discussion just yesterday at Metro Council. So there is quite a bit of kind of live and in the moment updates on this program. The preferred bond scenario that you see on the screen, the information for the preferred bond scenario does also carry over into a few different pieces of information that is technical. There's a lot of evaluation happening to evaluate the nominated projects. There's also a financial assessment underway. There's also policy direction, Metro Council, JPACT, and a number of other kind of regional policies and plans in place. The program direction here is referenced for objectives that gives this potential program clear policy kind of guidelines and groupings. And then there's, of course, a lot of input along the way. So TPAC is, again, the technical group that's supporting the JPAC members. There's Metro Council. There will be public comment into the spring, which is late, the very last couple days of March and into April. And then this will all kind of come back to the committees and look for approvals and adoption in kind of June, July. To date, there has been a number of pieces of input given into the possible considerations. And the last few months have consisted of a lot of discussion, questions, explorations. And so a few bullets on the screen now are some of the key pieces of feedback from TPAC and JPAC so far to date. I won't read every one of these necessarily word for word, but I would submit to you, it seems they are both a blend of multiple ways to achieve goals and outcomes for identified policies and adopted policies in the region. And some of them, could potentially be, I don't quite want to say conflicting, but they're different ways to deliver on some of these goals and objectives. So a lot of discussion is occurring about the most important ways to move forward. And our purpose today, this is a really good time to make sure and share thoughts about this process and the types of projects from all around the region, including here within our county, that we feel would deliver local priorities and align with the many different policy guidelines in place. In your packet here, there's also a kind of range of scenarios for a potential new bond. This is not quite fitting on one page. This is the Metro memo. So I'll try to zoom out a tiny bit so you can see what would be this full chart here altogether. A main takeaway is across the top, there are 5 different scenarios, maximizing RTP outcomes, leveraging categorical representation, regional corridor scale, and then readiness all the way to the right. And down the table vertically, there are representative projects that the team has shown and tries to do a little bit of an evaluation for the requested bond proceeds total. So that total amount there from 114 million, 117 million, 86, 100, and 105. Those are all pretty hefty total packages. The team evaluated with kind of indications of low, medium, high, how those are performing across a number of these same categories of kind of readiness, leverage, et cetera. So they try to lay out a few different scenarios. Feedback to date has been that this is a very helpful approach, and it's not always kind of an apples to apples comparison. So for example, something like readiness could very well mean just construction readiness to some folks. Other project nominations, readiness is very applicable to advancing projects through things like project development that help a project get to construction, but it's not quite ready for construction just yet. So readiness is one factor that's getting some discussion. Leverage as well. Some of the projects all are looking to leverage the same type of federal funding, and so there could be some risk there. RTP outcomes, all of those often are seeing kind of medium high results. And then geographic representation as well, corridor regional scale and categories of representation are indicated here. So I want to pause here in just a minute, but mention one other kind of major piece of information. There are multiple ways to consider mechanisms for a new bond scenario. So further into the packet, there are a few options that are laid out. The very first bullet is a single bond mechanism. So that would be use of a single bond mechanism to advance funds for projects. Secondly, there is an option for multiple bonds. So that would be projects in a scenario, a package of projects that would require more than one bond mechanism. Metro staff has determined so far and shared some of the estimated revenue forecasts of both option 1 and option 2, but the option 2 multiple bonds, because it is a bit more complex, those numbers are still coming together. The Metro team has conveyed that they believe some of the costs would be greater to incur if there are multiple bonds used instead of just a single bond format. An important note here is that if you can see the 84 million figure, that is what the team is reporting that is the optimistic amount of proceeds generated. And so if you recall, just above, we touched on a few scenarios that all total above that amount, between kind of 87 and 117 million. And so one main question so far has been how best to kind of balance the requested amounts and try to better match that to the available estimated proceeds that could be generated. You see a lot of TBD figures there for a multiple bond scenario as well. So we are kind of right in the middle of this process. Things are still coming together. And that will be also, I think, of interest for the JPAC members tomorrow, is to see if there are any updates on those to be determined placeholders there. So I do want to wrap up here in a second and pause for a little more discussion, share a few thoughts, but just want to remind you that there are a few different things to consider here, where step one in this process, the first piece of kind of a given is committing to repay the pieces that are already established. And so this is that new opportunity where it's not considered a given that the region may decide this is the time's not right to move forward. So there's some discussion about hesitancy, whether the time is right now to do a new bonding scenario. And then, of course, the multiple ways to have nominated projects speak to those possible pieces that can deliver on multiple outcomes. So I want to offer just a couple of thoughts here before opening it up a touch more for discussion. What's apparent to date in this process is that there are a range of projects that have been nominated from around the region. Not all of those projects are the same types of projects. There are multiple needs around the region and just here within our county. So depending on that, that also often means that it's most likely that a multiple bond mechanism would be needed to deliver upon projects of different types. In this region, historically, the single bond mechanism has been used to deliver mostly a similar type of project. So that is a key point that we are, kind of at here in the process. So that was a lot of information. There are lots of pieces of this puzzle still kind of coming together and relatively fluid. Referring to the RUFA acronym, the Regional Flex Fund Allocation, does have a few different parts and pieces within it. This is primarily focusing on the new bond, which is a new opportunity. It's not a given that it would go forward. So that's what is underway, is evaluating all the various alternatives and options to make sure that the region does have interest in taking on a new bonding obligation and picking projects that are best for that fit. The last quick mention here is just yesterday, Metro Council did also receive an update on this project in the work session. And there was some hesitancy acknowledged, but Metro Council President did kind of direct the team to continue studying so that everyone could make the best decisions possible to not slow down on any hesitation. So that was a lot of information. This is not always clean cut right now in the process, so apologies. It's a little confusing. I'll pause there and see if there's any kind of discussion or questions I could try to answer here today.
Very good. Thank you, Jeff. I appreciate that. And, just so I better understand kind of the notion of multiple bonds versus a single bond. I mean, is it about a bond's capacity? Is it about flexibility and payback duration? And is it about tying a bond to specific projects where it's kind of like, hey, you're saying this is important and this isn't? Why? What's the rationale behind that?
Yeah, welcome others to chime in as well. My understanding is that A single bond mechanism would traditionally be aimed at a certain type of project. Historically, that's been an FTA, the Federal Transit Administration CIG Capital Improvement Program type of project, which is high capacity transit. The multiple bond scenario is likely needed to advance different types of projects that could include things other than high capacity transit. There's also a little bit of a nuance there where just yesterday there was discussion on which entity might be administering the bond and whether federal programs would be needed or not. So there still are a few variables there as part of that. Hope
Okay.
that helps a little bit, and welcome others to chime in.
It does help a little bit. I appreciate that. Councilor Pratt, you're first up.
Hi, Jeff. I was wondering, there's a statement in here that additional partnerships are required to facilitate the ability to meet the bond mechanism requirements or administrative criteria. So I was wondering, I'm assuming that has to do with leveraging on federal funding, but I was just wondering if you could further explain that a little.
Yeah, I believe your read is on point there. Again, I'm sorry, I'm not exactly part of the project team that's doing the work. That's the Metro team, but I do believe that that's a statement aimed at a little bit of the unknowns, where depending on the mechanisms that are chosen, there may be additional things that come with that, specific to the type of project. So I'm afraid I probably can't give you a wonderful answer this morning, but it does reference a little bit of that unknown as to what the mechanism that's chosen might entail.
Very good. Thank you for that response, Commissioner Savas.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. If you'll all indulge me a little bit, because we have a couple new folks and I think through this almost a year-long journey on this RUFA conversation that's been happening at JPAC. Some of you have been part of that, present for part of that, and maybe not. So I just want to fill in some gaps, but I'm going to start at the very basic level of concern, and that is that, over the history in Clackamas County, we have, I think, have been consistently advocating for basic public transportation services. So I think one might think shuttles and buses would probably fit best, probably to say that there's been, years-long advocacy. I could say, for as an active citizen in the transportation arena, 25 years that I can speak to, that I was personally involved with. And what we consistently heard was, well, geez, we can't really provide bus service or anything else unless you have a bus stop or a curb or, an adequate means of which people can, the bus can pull over on pavement and have people stand on a curb and whatnot. So, and one of our projects here, for example, is really just that. It's in an area where there's very little transit service, and we are trying to launch a project. And if you don't have anything, then you can't get anything. It's a circular argument. How do you get there from here, kind of a thing? So, you don't have enough density, so therefore you don't get transit, or so on. So we need, we need a start, right? We need a catalyst. So when this conversation got started about a year ago, it was along the lines of a category, if you want to call it that, or a type of really kind of project development, getting something started. And as some of you who have been around, a couple of meetings ago, we were talking about, geez, you evaluated these projects with the same criteria, yet they're different types. So, you're going to get skewed results. And so that's a concern. And then when I look at this, this new presentation that Jeff just went over with regard to the bonding scenarios and these new 5 categories, if you want to call them that, for bonding scenarios, I'm scratching my head a little bit on that one category of the how ready a project is. So my question, Jeff, and I might ask our respected colleague, Metro Councilor Christine Lewis, to chime in. But if you, Jeff, could at least address if you just look at some of those projects, I understand that they're really not ready. There's a lot of study that's underway for a lot of them. So do we have any idea how those are really rated? And it seems like some that are probably more ready in the project development world are, you know, not listed. So I'm just, it's never been clear what the criteria is or the definition of the criteria. And it seems that we might, you know, are often either disqualified or score low, yet the criteria is not really reflective of those three different categories or types of rough goals that we set forth earlier in the year. That being last year. Jeff?
Yeah, thank you for that, Commissioner Savas. I do agree, and I think a lot of the criteria still do kind of weight heavily from a traditional lens on some of those high capacity transit projects. I do think that would also be really good to ask of the team tomorrow, presenting to JPAC to try to clarify. I do believe some of that is coming out of the program direction by Metro Council. But I think there's also a bit of fluidity there. I think that has been something we've raised at the TPAC level, at the technical level of readiness. There are many project submittals that are totally ready, you know, ready to advance. It's just one step before all the way to construction. So sorry, I don't have a better answer for you, but I do think that is a very valid question to keep asking and make sure there's attention on that.
Yeah. So if I could, knowing that the Metro Council has discussed this and has more substantive dialogue and deliberations over things like this than JPAC has and JPAC time allows. So Councilor Lewis, do you have anything you could add that kind of gives us any kind of hope that, you know, our projects are not, you know, that don't seem to be scoring very well in the last couple Metro presentations have any life at all?
Yeah, so we did have a discussion yesterday, and I guess I would just phrase things differently. I don't think we have any level of deeper deliberation at Metro Council than we have at JPAC. We received almost an identical PowerPoint yesterday to what will be presented tomorrow. So I do think JPAC is given the same level of information Metro Council is. But with regards to the scores, we have the ability now to shape the policy package. So scores, frankly, nobody is happy with their project score. We have a lot of projects that for the part of the community they serve are top priority. They have a readiness. There is the potential for leverage, and everybody is showing a vulnerability somewhere across the board. So there is no clear choice to make here. In our deliberations, we will have to narrow. Right now, we have a large set of projects. I think we'll have to narrow before we're actually going to get kind of to the very end. I've heard, you know, we're going to go down to maybe 5 or 6 to do even more study on, to really refine, to figure out what the exact right number would need to be, because nobody's going to get fully funded out of a bond. If we bonded, as Jeff pointed out, at the maximum amount we think we can bond and manage repayment to be pretty steady, we would be able to fund in full one project, and that won't make anybody happy. We, at the end of the day, want to have a small handful, 3, 4. So if we're going to move forward with 3 or 4 projects, we need to start advocating for our project, I think, to move on to the next level. In terms of the historical context for how bonding has worked as part of RUFA, it has been a behind closed door. TriMet is going to bond, they're going to do their project, and nobody else. So Metro has kind of wrestled this out of it being TriMet doing the bonding, which is why there's discussion of which mechanism we use, which agency tool we use, in terms of if we are going to use a federal bonding tool. And those programs obviously have their own requirements. So I think we want to keep everything on the table. As inefficient as 2 bonds might be, as non-traditional as using something other than an FTA bond might be, we want to keep that on the table because that helps support Sunrise.
Thank you, Councilor.
Very good. Thank you for the responses, Mayor Buck.
Yes, thank you. Well, Councilor Lewis, can I just follow up on that a little bit? So with the like under a 2 bond scenario, would you know, one bonds just be funding like one particular project and then other projects falling under different criteria, funded by a different bond?
I mean, I'm not an expert, but the idea there would be if there's some reason why we would maximize transit under an FTA bond, we would use that for the transit heavy projects or the transit only projects. And any project that's doing something that's transit plus, we would use FHWA or some other mechanism. That said, we could use FHWA, I think, for almost all of it. But then you might be losing some efficiency. And I might be wrong. There may be some things that transit is precluded from, and you have to go the other way. I brought this up in my line of questioning yesterday to staff. We did not get at the level of, all our staff would say is both federal programs are good and they have their strengths, and there's no need right now to pick our winner. We need to continue on focused on projects, and we'll align which ones fit into which bonding programs kind of at the next step of evaluation.
Okay. I mean, is the timeline the same for the bond timeline, or does one scenario like extend the life of the bond over it? And did they talk about that?
They did not talk about the length of the bond or in terms of bond repayment. The thing that's really important to understand is the reason we're having this conversation right now is because the bond repayment on our current bonds is down to about 50 million. And the idea is to manage the debt so that whatever we add on will essentially plateau. So we're backing off of previous debt while adding new debt at a manageable level. I think it's important to make sure to understand, though, that we still have those previous debt payments in future years, so we can't spike up too much because we already have a base of repayment for at least one more cycle. Jeff might have more details about how many years out we are.
No, I appreciate your comments there. I was trying to find it quickly. I think it might be referenced into the 2030s, maybe as late as 2040 at the latest. But I do think that could also be something we try to clarify for you, and we can get a note out if needed to clarify that.
It's to repay the current bonds. Oh, I see. I thought this conversation was coming up because we had repaid the current bonds.
The current bond repayments have dropped down to a quite manageable level. Not nothing, but it's not the impact it used to be with the last cycle.
Okay. And then I guess final question. So like you mentioned, Council List, like, I mean, we've at the JPAC table, it's like, oh, we don't want to talk about the projects, blah, 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 lofty goals, a lot of, but now is the time, to talk about is now the time at JPAC to start advocating for our project.
I think we should always be advocating for our project. So
Well, they
yes.
told us before, don't advocate for the project.
Well, that's when we were setting their criteria. We're past there.
Well, it's great. I mean, I feel like that was such a big part of this conversation, was making sure if we are going to go down this road of the bond, that there's a geographic parity. I mean, that seemed to be like the top thing, that we talked about at these meetings. So you can see in these different, scenarios that are laid out here that some have some good geographic parity and others, do not. So in my mind, that alone, wipes out a couple of the scenarios. Because that would be, I think, not true to kind of the way we started this process,
Yeah. In some of his comments, Councilor Gonzalez, as the JPAC chair, is talking about it as the trio of Sunrise, 82nd, and TV Highway. And the question is, which one or two projects do we add to that trio? That trio really hits the region's top priorities from the county levels. And then, frankly, you've got some tension between Montgomery Park and Burnside Bridge, which serve almost the same geographic area, are very different projects and are both top priorities for Portland and Multnomah County. So, not saying they have to choose, but there's three. And then if we add one or two more, those are top of mind as well.
Very good. Thank you for that information. Commissioner Savas, anything to add on this topic?
No, I would, I do recall and just want to echo what Councilor Lewis just said. You know, they did indicate that as the bond payments were rolling downward or near bond defeasement, that there was more capacity to increase new bonding, and make the payments and all that. So that phasing, I call it, that phasing of bond retirement and taking on new debt is really a management issue. So that was my understanding as of last year as well. So I just want to just echo and confirm that my recollection is in alignment with what Councilor Lewis just stated.
Very good. Thank you very much. I'm looking around the room to see if there was any final comments, thoughts, feedback on this topic before we transition on. All right, we will move into our MPAC MTAC updates. Mayor Buck, you want to tell us all about MPAC, or shall we take it from the top? Okay, so I think last meeting we talked about this at C4, but last meeting at MPAC, Council President Peterson provided an update on housing funding, and I know at the county level that has caused some significant concerns. You know, it's taking some of the prior money and distributing it in a different way in the future. But I think Commissioner Savas, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but one of the significant concerns is a reduction in the amount over time. Well, a couple concerns: reduction in the amount over time, and then decision making, where the control is in that situation, taking some of that from the county and local level and bringing that up to the metro level. And so that produced a very robust conversation. I would say that, you know, there's a lot of concern going forward with that, and I'm not sure. I think there are a couple of presentations still to come, a couple of public listening sessions coming up, and then it's going to Metro Council. Commissioner Savas, do you remember the time frame of what's happening on that going forward?
Well, I know it's moving very fast, and you know, sometimes when I read some of the news media, as of like I did this morning, what occurred yesterday, I didn't have a chance to read everything, but it appears as though that Metro Council is moving forward towards putting it on the ballot soon. So you know, two of the county commissioners were allowed to basically sit at the table last Friday, following our C4 meeting, but Friday morning it was a big meeting. And as I understand it, and as I kind of witnessed, is that, you know, midway through there, and I thought that the meeting was, and maybe Councilor Lewis can chime in and help out with this, but my understanding was this was like, okay, we come together and work on shaping this. And you know, I think while there were a number of people that were concerned the decision was already made, halfway through that work session Friday at Metro, Council President Peterson released basically an email to everyone, telling everyone what they're going to do, which was not necessarily consistent with everything still on the table when we're deciding. It was like, here's how we're going to do it, and here's the percentages. So what I learned, that as opposed to a 0.1 or a 10% potential reduction, that what the email displayed was 0.25, but at a staggered. So maybe by 2031, they would keep until then, they would keep everything at a particular level. Thereafter, it would be reduced by 25% of what's currently collected, if I understood the email correctly. This is very dynamic. So, you know, perhaps what is today is probably different than what was Friday or so forth. So that's why I'm asking Councilor Lewis to lean on her a little bit. But as you saw from our staff, Adam Brown, when he presented, even though, because it's so dynamic, even though what he displayed on that nice little graph that he showed Thursday night, you know, we were using that 0.1 or 10% reduction of collections as a guideline, and it demonstrated we would cut into existing services, that it would be a detriment no matter what. So there were two pieces of that. However, what has been mathematically and has been one of my concerns going back to the beginning, that as these collections rolled in, they there was a lag, and then there was a big boom, and that was really the notification and all the tax consultants and people paying their back taxes. So I asked all along and never got the answer. How much of these collections, these spiking, nice looking, we're over collecting, how much of these collections are back taxes, and how much of it is really stable? And no one, I could never get that information disaggregated in a way that we could see that. So therefore, I think Metro set and launched on this effort based on this, hey, we're collecting so much we never intended to, and now it's now spiked down considerably. And is that spike down because people are no longer employed? My estimation, and others are financially looking at this, is saying, actually, now we're normalizing, right? We got, now the back taxes are now, less, and now we're seeing more of a steady. So that line that Adam Brown showed us Thursday night, that even those lines dig down and went deeper cuts, even if you use the 0.1%. So we're not over, frankly, it doesn't appear that we're actually over collecting like Metro first thought. And so those cuts are going to be deeper. We haven't really calculated for that. And that was based on 0.1. So if President Peterson's 0.25 is correct, those cuts are going to be more severe. So that's my takeaway. But Metro, I just, again, maybe lean on Councilor Lewis to maybe explain that. And Jamie, I see in the chat, do you have that chart that Adam Brown, if you could display that chart, I can maybe, there was a green line and a red line. We based everything off the red line. So when you see the chart that Jamie's going to display, that's what we've been based on. But the 0.25 was a surprise, as well as the fact that it was based on the over collection amount, not the real amount. So there you go. So when you see those dashed red lines, based on two situations, number one, what the real 2024 forecast is in the green line, that would be far less. But add the delta between 0.1% or 0.25 or 25%, that's going to take a deeper cut. So I would expect that would have a severe cut. It would be significantly lower than what it appears even in this chart. And again, this is all dynamic, so I apologize for that. But because it's so dynamic, I think it's creating a lot of uncertainty. So I respectfully maybe see if Councilor Lewis wants to add anything as to what that email really was trying to convey Friday morning.
Sure, thanks. There's a lot that was just said. So I will start by the fact that we had a 40+ member team that has been advising on all things housing. And the stakeholder table had taken a pretty significant hiatus. So it was our first time getting the stakeholder advisory table back together for months. So the email that went out was a little bit more of a press release with this group has gotten back together, and less of a here's the proposal that we're going forward with. The 2.5% cut is a number that we're starting off with because some coalition has come together around that proposal. It is clearly not sticking. There are further negotiations around potential tax cut. In our conversation on Friday, we even had one member stand up and say, look, I would like to have a more progressive tax cut conversation. The idea here is that we are going to continue to listen, but we are also at the place where we have to be moving towards a set of reforms, because everybody wants everything to stay just the way things are, except for this one thing that they find wrong. The problem is, depending on which stakeholders you're talking to, that one thing that needs changed is different. For some community members, everything is great except for governance and oversight. For some people, it's lack of data and no data. For some, it is the inability to actually figure out what is happening on the ground, because some providers are preferenced and others aren't. And yet for others, it's the longer term economic health of this region. And then additionally, we are in the mid-year, we are at midpoint, and we are barely out of startup zone. And we are either going to have to say we are committed to doing this for the long haul and we want to prepare ourselves for a renewal, or else we're going to have to start wind down plans because this is a 10-year tax. So we're having all of those conversations at once. And I believe that in order to get us to a place where voters are going to say, yes, let's keep doing this, we have to institute a set of reforms. Additional, we cannot wait until 28 to be on the ballot asking people to do an extension as we are actually starting to do a wind down or a true cut environment. Finally, to the bar chart you just saw, the two lines there that are the forecasts. I want to remind us all that we are dealing with two of the most volatile taxes. We are off 6% in our forecast this year. That is our local folks doing their local version of a revenue forecast. 6% is a normal swing. It's a normal number to be off. So if 6% is causing us this much consternation, I do think we have to have some changes in order to find what we consider to be a base amount and a dependable revenue, and actually just rely on that stream. And in a good year, find other ways that we're going to budget for what comes in over. For context, the state revenue forecast was off by nearly 40%. So we, I think, actually have a fairly good grip on the local finances and the lay of the land in terms of what is dependable revenue. And Metro would love to be a helpful partner in the current structure. Each of the counties receive their share of the funding days, just a week or so after the funds come in through City of Portland collections. And then the counties are responsible for budgeting what's service dollars, what's regional investment fund RIF dollars, and what's stability fund and reserves. And each of the three counties has a different approach to when to hit those reserves. And I will say, I think if we are experiencing the discussion of cuts and we are saying we're at a downturn and we are 6% short, it might be time to start talking about the reserves, but none of the counties are using any of the reserve funds. So there's a large conversation to be had around which of these funds are certain, are stable, and do we want to actually budget those differently than we budget the more volatile end of the tax collection. I think that our initial proposal from Metro was to budget for the counties getting year over year the stable funds, and then the more volatile funds getting additional service dollars or putting those dollars into housing when it was a year that we were at or above a revenue forecast.
Yeah. Thank you for that. A couple things I'll comment on, and I'll maybe ask Mayor Buck to maybe give some of the city perspectives, or the mayor's perspectives on this issue. So, a couple comments. I concur that it's not a reliable source or a steady source of income, right? I concur with that. We have, looked at this from, a mathematical and a legal standpoint. Can Metro Council or any of us who have any kind of levy out there or whatnot that we put on the voters, can we reduce the amount without voter approval? And the answer is yes. Yes, you can. There's nuances to it. You have to have legitimate reasons to do it. But you don't necessarily need voter approval. Another dynamic of this is that I think just day before yesterday, I believe, Multnomah County, all the county commissioners sent Metro a letter saying, please pause. The counties are not on board with this. And I'm not saying we're necessarily in perfect alignment. I won't go there, but I think each county has had its different level of success. And Metro Councilor, you were not able to join us Thursday night, but Adam Brown explained our reserves and how we were spending that down, and we were appropriating that to capital projects, which take a while to indeed get underway. You know, you can't spend capital money overnight. So, but it's all programmed. Every dollar at the Metro's forecasted amount was programmed, and now that forecasted amount, as you said, is, you know, again, I agree completely. It's dynamic. It's not consistent. So as we reprogram it at the current levels, you know, it's going to be less. Period. And the reserves, yeah, we have reserves to help soften some of those impacts along the way, but I think the numbers, the way they're coming in, I think a year or two of pause would at least get some flattening and some better understanding of a consistent level. And hopefully Metro Council will maybe listen to more of the electeds and the practitioners, that being the counties and the cities that are engaged in providing those services. Because having 40 people that are, you know, a lot of them being recipients and not having that high degree of level and history of institutional history of providing these services and working with this population in many, many ways, and all the grants and all the administrative issues and challenges that exist, that, you know, it's not unlike the state. You know, it's a complex thing, and for a new startup or maybe a nonprofit that's providing services, they don't have the deep bench of admin to understand all of this and experience it. And a lot of them are new. They just jumped into this whole thing. So some of them are brand new, but it's good to have them at the table, but to have it dominated by non-electeds and non-practitioners, that's our governance issue right there. That for us. So Mayor Buck, I was wondering if you could at least give the mayor's perspective. I know that they've been discussing around the region about this as well.
Thank you, Commissioner Sevis. Yeah, you know, like the good news is that, you know, around that table, I mean, everyone was on board with the need essentially to extend, you know, the program for some amount of time, with the program in general, with the good work that it's doing. Seems like the debate is kind of around the timing here of the, you know, when we go back out for the renewal and kind of the details that need to be worked out in the meantime. And I mean, I do hear, and I've seen it in the, you know, the press releases and the responses that Metro's given to the different things coming out, but it is kind of like this little false, you know, dilemma that's being promulgated, that if we don't go to the ballot now, then we're never going to go. And I mean, I think we got to stop saying that, because it's not, we're nowhere near 2028. We just started 2025. So I mean, it's just like obvious, right? That yeah, there could be another year plus, you know, of time, with the counties, the cities, Metro, the stakeholders all working together to really build back the public trust. Because I think that's what's most disturbing, is that there's just very little public trust in the efficacy, the efficiency of the programs. And you know, from where I sit, I've seen this like great coming together of the counties and the cities over this time period. I mean, it's been fantastic, you know, frankly, lots of good cooperation. The cities came into it originally, or the mayors, you know, saying that, well, we'd really like to have some direct, you know, funding as part of this program. But I think now that the ask has evolved, is that's challenging, right? It's just everyone, it's more of this fiefdom stuff, everyone fighting over the limited dollars, and, you know, everyone wanting to get like their guaranteed piece of the pie and all of that. And with 24 cities, I mean, everyone has such, you know, different needs. I mean, from our very large cities who are running shelters and, you know, have the staff, you know, dedicated to these issues, to the smaller cities who don't have, you know, staff that are experts in this field at all, but who have bond funded projects and are obviously, you know, impacted by the issue of you know, housing and homelessness. I mean, all of us are, right? So we've come to the realization that the cities have to be working hand in hand with the counties, and there needs to be some, you know, requirement for county city cooperation. And it's been great the counties are on board with that, and just seems like we're moving down this right path. But the one thing that the mayors and the counties are all really unanimous about is that now is not the time to go to the ballot. This May is not, it's not right. That we could be in this intervening time working to build back public trust. I mean, just the fact alone that we can't articulate exactly how much money has been spent to help exactly how many people, that's a big problem. And when I mean, Council Lewis did a great job, came, to our council, and the Metro councils have been coming to other cities. I'm sure many of you have had the presentation. I mean, that was a big concern, that we can't demonstrate exactly who has been helped. I mean, it's a lot of money to not have that kind of just basic logical data, that we should say we took in this much money and we helped this many people through these different buckets. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that would help improve the public trust over these intervening years, so that then Metro, the cities, the counties, I mean, all elected officials in the region, I think, would be walking hand in hand to the ballot together, instead of walking to the ballot where you're going to have I mean, all these elected officials opposing the measure. I mean, I just don't see how you go forward with that. And the only people supporting it are the ones receiving the money, those organizations. And then the Chamber of Commerce, who just wants a tax reduction. I don't know. It just doesn't seem like that's a viable path forward. And if this measure fails at the ballot, it's not going to be good for any of us. So that's kind of where we sit.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Mayor. It really isn't really an us or them kind of a thing in my humble opinion, because our staff, at least at Clackamas County, I can tell you that our intention is not to receive these dollars and spend them internally. It is to, and we've been pushing them out to nonprofits. So the actual people that are delivering that, we need them, right? So it's actually a partnership. So, and same thing with this, with each city. We've involved the cities, and we need the cities, right? The homeless they are homeless where they're homeless, right? So that's everywhere, unfortunately. So that's why we need the cooperation of the cities. And I've set off in big programs, even in my private sector, and realized that, you tackle something, you take on something, and you start making adjustments. But making a wholesale adjustment this soon, I just, from a practical standpoint, without having those metrics, as Mayor Buck just spoke to, I think a fool's errand. I think it's a mistake. And secondly, the other thing that's really, really unique is that each county has its own, prior to this measure, has its own level of services and departments and people that worked on these problems prior to the measure. So it looks different in Multnomah County. That's totally legitimate. It looks different in Clackamas County. That's legit, so on. So when we build our system, we're building on a different base or foundation. So therefore, the way we approach is going to be unique. And as a large provider of the counties, as a large provider, and the city of Portland's a big one too, as a large provider of those services, we're using those SH dollars to augment and grow a system. And those systems are different. So for a lot of people, that 40 people are recipients that don't understand that, it's not going to be coordinated. And that's why this governance issue is so big with us, is that it's not that we're hoarding the dollars. We want to make sure it's coordinated. We need to make sure that there's bang for the buck and there's coordination, but coordination in Clackamas County looks different than coordination in Washington County. So, having a governance model that takes all that, takes that voice and dilutes that voice down to recipients who don't understand that and don't have the responsibility to the voters, I think is another error in my humble opinion. So I think the pause in the Multnomah County letter they sent was logical, and that's probably something, we sent letters to help this conversation along, but I think a formal letter of a pause might be something that Clackamas County entertains next week as well.
Can I add something, Commissioner?
Sure.
The premise of this, right, is that we need to siphon some of the money off for housing. And just in the environment, right, which I think everyone agrees that increasing the flexibility of the allowed uses is a good thing. But just directly off the top, taking money at this point in time would be detrimental to the county-run programs. And I mean, just right now, I don't know about in y'all's jurisdictions, but we have one Metro bond funded project that doesn't even have the funding to construct. I mean, it's got the bond funding, right? But they can't put together the entire package of funding just with the housing construction, the environment right now. So unless we're planning on this bond, just like paying for entire, I mean, what are you going to get? One housing project, 140 unit. So we're going to compromise these programs to, in some place, build one project or something. I mean, it just doesn't seem like it's worth all of this at this point in time. Where I mentioned one housing, we have a market rate project that can't even get funding. I mean, it's just not a good economic environment right now to construct housing. Unfortunately, you know, it's always what happens. It's not a good thing, but it's a fact. It just doesn't seem like this. We're going to be able to leverage. We talk about leverage and all these transportation projects and all this stuff. We're not going to be able to leverage these bond dollars at all right now. It just doesn't seem worth the disruption to the county programs to put some tens of millions of dollars into housing projects that can't be leveraged, that aren't going to get off the ground.
So Mayor, that's actually one of the reasons why I think the time is sooner than later. In order to actually leverage the voucher dollars into a finance stack for housing, you actually need 20 years. And right now, these vouchers are ending in 5. So it's great that we have folks who have been housed with these local vouchers that are basically parallels of a housing choice voucher. A housing choice voucher from the federal government can be leveraged as part of your finance stack as dependable rent pay income. But our local vouchers can't be because they end in 5 years. So while we have the ability to house people, we've housed 3,000 to 4,000 people with them, they're not useful from a housing development perspective, and it will take a vote of the people to change that. So
Right.
that's just one example of how having flexibility for housing doesn't change the services that are being provided, but will give us housing bang for the buck while also still providing the services.
Yeah, but
So-
that's not what but that the ARLA vouchers aren't allowed. That's how the counties are spending the money. Metro wants to siphon off money off the top. That not ARLA vouchers.
We would like to have investments in housing, that's right, but only in years where we have surplus revenue above those projected. And we would like to be able to use those dollars like we did in a bond project to be a one layer of a housing stack. We're not going to buy housing whole cloth because we know that the housing development environment isn't good for that. But you know, we are in the environment where 5 or 6, 7, $8 million here and there can really change gap financing for projects that are really good and worthy.
So I appreciate that the conversation shifted this way to the sticks and bricks because Counselor, you and I have not had a chance to talk about this, but you know, this conversation unfortunately has been conflated with, you know, sticks and bricks and services. And as we're realizing there's less money, not programmed, but less money forecasted. Now it's so compressed that the sticks and bricks is I think is the concern and an impediment possibly to delivering the services as Mayor Buck's trying to speak to. So I'm wondering why, because the bond measure, for those of you know, there's two measures out there. The bond measure was first to build sticks and bricks, and then there was a supportive housing services measure. So why is not Metro taking their success with the bond measure, right, for the sticks and bricks? We've done very well, right? Every county's performed well. Why can't we either extend that or grow that and go to the voters with our successes and say, renew this or extend this or something to get more money? And then your voucher argument, which, yeah, I mean, the more
Commissioner, with all due respect, that's what we're trying to do. We are trying to say, let us replicate the success we've had in being a financer using this bond. However, we would then be asking the voters to pass a bond on top of a bond, because despite the fact that every single dollar is allocated and is in a project and is in the ground, either the building is open and people are living there or it's in construction, we will be paying that bond until 38. So it is a tax increase if we go with a new bond. We cannot renew until 38.
Yeah. And then the other side of the coin is it'll be a service decrease if we use that same fixed amount of money, which is now suddenly less because of forecasting. And now we'll be dipping in. So I think we're cutting off our nose to spite our face, so to speak.
Well, it's a complicated conversation. There will never be enough money for services. And if we were actually getting the results that we needed to see, I think we would be in a different position. But we have 3 counties running 3 independent programs, and some of those counties have achieved results, and Clackamas County is one where you actually see the 65% in the pit count reduction. But without Metro having any access to data, we have no clue what's going on. We need to see the 3 counties sign their data sharing agreements. We need to get smart with our data. And at the end of the day, this is going to be a conversation that's going to be ongoing for years to come because there's never going to be enough money for services. The age-old question has been, and like this is how Multnomah County got themselves in the hole. They did 0 investment in shelter and did 100% investment in housing, and they got out of whack one way. We need to find the middle ground, particularly since PSH models are being developed and are super, super effective. You can't have PSH without having the unit plus the services, so we need both.
Yeah, just so again, a couple new people in this group, I just want to just remind everyone that I think your points and just all the points being made here today is why the Clackamas County Commissioners in September, I believe, sent a letter to Metro Council asking for a roundtable of the elected officials to talk about this, the practitioners, the people that Clackamas County does the housing in sticks and bricks. We've been at it longer than any housing agency in the state of Oregon. So we are deeply experienced in that realm, and we're deeply effective in delivering that, as well as the supportive housing services. So I think we can all learn from one another. But we never had that opportunity to sit down as a roundtable with all the commissioners and all the interested city councilors and mayors to have that deeper discussion as providers of services and how we coordinate that as alongside, of course, with the Metro councilors to get all of us educated and at least try to get metrics. And I think we're all speaking to metrics, which it seems to be natural that why aren't we just trying to gather that data, gather those conversations, pause, and go out with a more sophisticated approach in a year or two?
Commissioner, do I have your commitment that you'll ask your staff to share data with Metro?
Well, I believe that our coordinated housing access has now received national recognition, which
You're
is
not sharing your data with Metro. I have 2 data analysts who watch paint dry on the wall because the 3 counties for 2.5 years have come up with every legal argument they can to not share data. So I have no idea how to report what's going on in the region.
I'm not aware of that, but I will make a commitment that we get our staff here to explain that. I don't want anyone to think that somehow we're withholding something. That's not my understanding, but I'm not deep in the details. My portfolio is transportation, but this one's affecting all of us. So I would, I do know that we also have 2 new commissioners. So I will get you the answer, and I'll make sure that answer is sent to all the people here in this room, this Zoom room. But my understanding is our staff have done everything they can to be as transparent and open as possible. And I think that very example, Counselor, is something that would have come to the bubble at the top at a roundtable discussion. And
I appreciate. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and that's the opportunity we've asked for, but we're racing towards something and we're not really prepared.
I appreciate the robust conversation. We will certainly continue this conversation moving forward. And I'm going to take back over as co-chair prerogative because I failed miserably on the agenda, and I put Will Farley and Jeff Owen on the sidelines for TPAC. So we're going to jump backwards for a moment, cover TPAC, and then we'll just jump right back into the same segment of conversation again. Thank you very much to all of you for excellent conversation.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for having us back and welcome Will to jump in here. Part of your packet does contain a TPAC update with a few items. I could just touch a couple of things really quick and welcome Will's input. The bulk of TPAC discussion recently has also been much of what we've already discussed for the regional flex fund allocation. So that's been the bulk of our attention the last few months and moving forward. Your packet does have a bit of information around fatal crashes in the region. That's also part of the JPAC updates. Transit ridership. When we talk about the regional flex fund allocation, there is of course more than only the new bond. There's a few different pieces of that program. Many jurisdictions within Clackamas County have submitted project applications to step 2, which is a competitive or more kind of capital, smaller project bucket. Those are moving forward and being evaluated, and will come back to a few different avenues for evaluation and input into February and March. There's a number of kind of small housekeeping pieces of what we call the UPWP, the Unified Planning Work Program. And then, of course, minutes, the MTIP amendments are in there. And sorry for folks that are new for slipping into a couple acronyms, but don't want to go into too many details there at a technical level for all of you. The 82nd Avenue Transit Project has also come to TPAC as that project is advancing into an LPA, a locally preferred alternative, and getting into roughly about 15% design. So there's some information in your packet around that project and an equitable development strategy that's also part of that effort. And again, the reminder that that project, while the bulk of it is north of the Clackamas County line, it does also improve service to Clackamas Town Center. And then we do just have another touch here in the packet about what we've already discussed, so I won't go into detail there about the step 1 new project bond for the regional flex fund allocation. There's a little bit of a summary there as you wish for the types of questions and feedback that have occurred at the technical level, and then ending with a food for thought here of what we've already again touched on earlier in today's meeting about the different bond scenarios and mechanisms and the importance of maybe really continuing to explore that multiple bond mechanism that, as we understand it, is likely necessary to advance a range of projects. And then lastly, and I'll pause, there's a redistribution update. So this is good news. This is money that comes back into the region to go towards projects that that were previously awarded but have been experiencing some degree of kind of inflationary challenges or rising costs. And so that's also part of what the TPAC team takes on is how best to reallocate and redistribute some of those funds to previously awarded projects. So sorry for moving fast there, but welcome Will to chime in if I've missed anything there and take any questions.
Jeff covered everything pretty well from the meeting.
Very good, gentlemen. I appreciate the precise information. Any questions, comments for Jeff or Will? All right, gentlemen, you're off the hook. We will transition right back into MPAC and MTAC. Let's jump into the MTAC update and bring Jamie Stasny and Laura Turway online.
Good morning. My name is Laura Turway, and I serve as planning manager for the City of Happy Valley and sit on MTAC, the Metro Technical Advisory Committee, representing cities in Clackamas County other than Lake Oswego and Oregon City. MTAC met on December 18th. At that meeting, we had a presentation from Metro staff on 2 new resources from the Data Resource Center, which was Metro Map and Quick Facts Viewer. I can drop a link into the chat. As usual, good programs to help coordinate on GIS. Then we had a follow-up on the urban growth management decision. So on December 5th, Metro Council adopted the urban growth report and expanded the urban growth boundary by about 1,300 acres of land to include Sherwood's West new planning area. It's anticipated to bring about a little over 3,000 housing units and about 4,500 new jobs, and includes an industrial area. With that, approval, there is a list of conditions of approval. A couple of them included things like adoption of strategies to encourage affordable housing, designation of a new Main Street or commercial center in the expansion area, which is not already designated, expectations that industrial land be developed in compliance with Metro Title IV, and diverse community engagement. Lastly, MTAC heard an update on Safe Streets for All, which is focusing on regional traffic safety and systematic approaches to address pedestrian fatalities. Unfortunately, there has been a prevalence of fatal crashes in equity focus areas. In 2025, the project is going to deploy new safety data dashboards, expand advocacy for pedestrian focused infrastructure, particularly in these high risk areas. And then also continue to focus on local safety action plans and explore federal grant opportunities for some quick build projects. There is no MTAC meeting today. Our next meeting is February 19th. Happy to answer any questions.
Very good. Open it up to the floor. Oh, looking pretty good today. Very good. Okay. Further conversation today on any of the topics that we had online. Commissioner Zavis, anything to add?
No, as I mentioned earlier in our conversation with Councilor Lewis, I will be trying to get an answer. I did submit an email to our staff to try to get that answer. What I do recall, as I think about this deeper, is that we've been trying to negotiate an agreement with all 3 counties in Metro. So I do know that some of that was related to an agreement, and the difficulty in getting that. And you know, I'm not a lawyer, so I don't know why it takes so long to get everyone on the same page. But just this supportive housing services LIP agreement, it took 5 times longer than I ever thought it would take. It seemed like a year. I could be wrong, but it was at least 7 months before we could ink a deal. So these things take time, and I don't know why this is taking so much time as well. So I'm not gonna. I'll just leave it there. Thank you.
Very good. Commissioner Savis, I do appreciate your comments. Mayor Buck.
Yeah. Well, yeah, just to, echo that. I mean, that's kind of part of the, another part of the reason why like more cooperation, like 3 counties putting this together, it just seems like, when Metro's not even getting the data supposedly, that they need to report, or the data is, disparate between the 3, or reported differently, between the 3 counties, different formats, because it's up, to each one. Just makes it hard to understand the program. And this is the kind of, smoothing out that should occur before we go back. But, it's fair to recognize too. I mean, even it did, like, the cities in Clackamas County, I mean, they're working the best. This county and the cities are working the best between the 3. I mean, it's just, acrimony, unfortunately. But I mean, it seems like that's turning around, hopefully, in the other 2 counties. But even then, it took us like a long time to get that money. We still we've inked agreements, but I don't know if any of the other cities, like, we haven't received any money from the county yet for our partnership. And it's like clunky, right? Like, it's a receipt by receipt reimbursement thing. So it's like going from nonprofit partner to city to county for literally every line item. So I mean, instead of the county just, granting the money and letting the city disperse it to the nonprofit, it's just really inefficient. And, like we've talked about, this is like in these smaller cities where we don't have staff that does this. So, I mean, we're just taking folks in the city manager's office and who have other jobs and being like, hey, and also could you monitor this nonprofit? And I'm like, okay, so I mean, and I don't know. It just seems like there's some work to do to make the whole process better. And if we're doing this for years to come, I mean, there's that opportunity to do it. But all of this, like, I don't know, it just smells like the kind of turf wars and the distrust and, that people hate about government. And it seems like as a region, we can definitely do better.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. You bring up a good point. As I kind of mentioned earlier, from the beginning, how this got started is that, we were told by Metro way back, and shortly after the measure passed, that we would have the funds available on June 1st of 21 or whatever. I think it was 21. And when that June 1st came along, there were no funds. I mean, there was small amount, very, very small amount, but the voters and the tax collectors and the tax and accountants and everyone else didn't even know about this measure and didn't even know. So it took a year before even collections actually got any strength. And so, you know, we all had to scrape up, borrow, use reserves and whatnot. And I appreciate Metro gave us a loan to kind of kickstart this, which we did. But I will remind, and this is not a reflection on Metro, what I'm about to say here, but you know, we were, Mayor Buck, you remember this because you and I had a couple heated conversations. We were accused of cutting $11 million of services when we never cut $11 million. So, you know, and that information was dispersed by, unfortunately, that misinformation was dispersed by a group called Here Together, which is a consolidation of all the providers. And I don't know why they did that because it was not true. And we demonstrated that. So this started out rough, but you know, asking a basic question, as I mentioned earlier, a basic question, please disaggregate the money and tell us how much of these collections are back taxes and how much of it are baseline taxes, which is mathematically possible, by the way. You know, that would have prevented this miscalculation of the forecast. And I really think that had we actually had the real number, or Metro Council had the real number a year ago of what the forecast really was, taking out the back taxes, and granted it is unstable. I'm not saying that's a perfect stable source. It's not. I agree with Councilor Lewis on this. But had they had that, they probably wouldn't have ventured to the point of saying we're over collecting. And I don't think now with the forecast we're seeing that anyone can say actually we're over collecting, because now I think people are saying it's about what we thought. So that's hindsight. Hindsight is 2020. I get that, but I did ask for that information from the beginning and I never got it. So I'll leave it there.
One thing this program isn't short on is administrative dollars. So if anything,
Yeah.
they'll have the best data coming out there.
Yeah, definitely appreciate the feedback. And I think that's, you know, for me, I'm always trying to remind myself that our intentions are the same. Our goals are the same. It's providing superior assistance. It's providing replicable resources that we can count on over long periods of time. And so it's just a matter of how we get there and how we get on the same page to get there. And so I appreciate that. And I appreciate Councilor Lewis. Thank you for being here and being part of this conversation today. I know this is, these are all obviously very tough things to talk about. So, anything else for the good of the order today? Oh,
yeah.
Commissioner Savas, please.
Just one thing I want to just say is that I want to just extend my gratitude and appreciation to Councilor Lewis. She has been really helpful and accessible and helpful on this. And I do know that have we all, you know, we all make decisions and opinions based on the information we have. And if we just shared that more, you know, we might find ourselves really in alignment on a lot of issues, but we do want to connect. But what I do want to say, something that is no one's fault, and you know, whether it was COVID or whatever it was, is that Mayor, you mentioned it being clunky. A lot of these programs that are being delayed from launching are because we can't find the people or hire the people. The money's there, but we are, and we knew this. You don't just introduce millions and millions of dollars and launch programs overnight. You got to find the people, you got to get the expertise. They got to stand up all these organizations, nonprofits, the count, everything. So there's been a shortage of qualified or people, period, to hire to launch these things. So it indeed is clunky, but some of us knew that, and we recognized that and knew that we would be ramping up, and we wouldn't really plateau for 4 or 5 years. And we're just 3 years into this, as I see it. So I just want to give everyone that, you know, kudos for their cooperation, but let's just recognize there's things that are out of our control. And that's our labor pool. Counselor?
Yeah, sure. I do think that the additional perspective that both Clackamas and Washington County had coming from very small or modest existing programs, everything you did to grow was looking at where the areas of highest needs were and where the most successful programs were, so that you were just growing based off of success and need. Whereas I think Multnomah County, they had a large and complicated program as it was, with far more funding sources, and our funds have just been intermingled. And I don't say this often, but just throwing good money after bad, and not always using the same scales of vulnerability and effectiveness that the other two counties have. So that's one of the real drivers here, is that I think we need to a little bit overcorrect for what's happened in Multnomah County. That they had so much to build off of, that they were not as discerning as the other two counties were in building their program.
I thank you, Counselor. One thing I will say, based on this discussion, all the other discussions, is that we all really care. We all see the crisis at hand. And I think that's what's driving us to solutions. So I think everyone's well intended, and I appreciate that. So Counselor Sherman, back to you.
Very good. Well, I think as we're getting close to wrapping this meeting up, I will put on the floor that I am getting close to the end of my time on C4 Metro Subcommittee, and C4 as well. Council President Josh Callahan from Happy Valley will be taking over this role in the future. He'll be on C4 immediately, and I'll be part of C4 Metro Subcommittee for quite a period of time as he gets up to speed. Also, since I'll be chairing MPAC this year. I'm still the alternate on JPAC. I sit on Region 1 Area Commission on Transportation, and so I will still be part of this conversation going forward, but maybe on a little bit more on the sidelines for a period of time. And so I do want to say how much I enjoy and appreciate working directly with all of you. I think you are all really amazing stand-up people, and just the engagement and intelligence in this room and in many of the committees that I sit on, you're all just really impressive. And so I will miss being directly involved with this, but I will still be on the periphery, bothering you all on a regular basis. So I think going forward, Commissioner Savas, I'm sure we'll look for a co-chair. There'll be a conversation with that going forward as well. And be hard for you guys to fill my shoes, of course, but I'm sure there is someone capable of stepping up and doing that very easily. So with that, any final words before we jump off and face our Wednesdays?
Thank you for your service, Counselor Sherman, and thank you for all your contribution. You've been a stellar member of our group, and I appreciate your efforts.
I thank you for the kind words. I appreciate that. Very good. All right, with that, let's call this meeting adjourned. Have a great day. See you all again soon.